My name is June Feinsilver, and I am a survivor.
When you were a young girl, you lived in Lodz, Poland, is that correct?
In Poland, yeah, Lodz. The city I live in was a big city, industrial city, and we had a very, we were not rich uh, in words meaning of rich here, but we were comfortable. I had two brothers. One was 3 years younger, and one was 3 years older. And my younger brother was a genius. I mean, when we started school at 7. When I was 7, he knew more than I did. When he started right away, he went to second grade, and the principal said to my mother, if the law would permit, he would take him to third grade. My older brother was a bright boy too, but he was interested in soccer, and he was a very good soccer player, many. And instead of going to school, he went play soccer, and he got to more troubles. And my mother was so embarrassed because she was a president of PTA and very active in school affairs. So, but he grew up to be a really fine boy. He was really my defender always. When I got beaten up or I always say, wait till my big brother catch you and stuff like that. He was crazy about me. My younger brother always fought with me. Then we used to go to my grandmother's for vacation. At least I had to go every year. I love my grandmother. And there was another aunt of mine who lived there in this small town. She was a teacher. Her husband was a principal in the school. And I had a little cousin who was also my younger brother's age. And we played together always very nicely. We were very family-minded and very sheltered. My father was a very handsome man. My mother was beautiful. She was short, but she was beautiful. And my younger brother was just good.
You were telling us about leaving the small town with your grandmother and going to Warsaw. What year was that?
That was in 1941, which was like 2 years since the war started. We went to Warsaw because my aunt, who was a teacher, used to live there. And so we all, my grandmother and my other aunt, and went all there to Warsaw. I mean, this was ghetto. It was, people were dying out of hunger on the streets and begging, and it was horrible. I had a friend that we almost were engaged, but he was in a different town. And he came, when we left, he said, 14 days after, you will see me in 14 days. I said, this is impossible. Nobody comes into Warsaw Ghetto. 14 days, somebody knocks at the door. My aunt who lived there, she didn't know him, only from my telling, and my other aunt knows him, my grandmother knew him. Well, he came to visit me, and he came also with the papers for me. I should go out of Polish of that ghetto to go outside as Irene Novak, my name would be, and to smuggle myself with a smuggler who was paid off to smuggle me to the ghetto he was in, Tomashov. That was another small town. But he was originally from Lodz also, except I didn't know him at home, and he was older than I was, which of course pleased me. Naturally, I was 17, he was probably 20 or 22. I never had friends that old. We had a very good time. He stayed with our family. Then all of a sudden he got a telegram from his parents. He had parents and one married sister and two single sisters. So one of them was my friend. That's how I met him. My aunts were very fond of him. Well, but they said they have no authority to let me go without any of my parents' permission, and they wrote to my mother and my father, and my mother said that she trusts my judgment, and if I wanted to go, because he said, you don't have your parents here, I have my parents there, so we'll marry there. Well, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know. It was my first love, really, and I didn't know what to do. But I said I can always come back here to my family. I went, and they were really very good to me, and I stayed with them, and I opened a library there. I brought a lot of books with me that I had from home. That's all I had is the books. The clothes were wearing out. And I opened a library with one of his sisters, the married one, and I stayed with her. And we were renting the books out. And it didn't work out. I didn't take my clothes or nothing. I just walked out from there and went to one of his sister's friends to live with, because she was the only one who would happen to have me. I was starving there, and I went to... things were very bad. People were dying out of hunger, and they were also... I didn't know nobody. Yet I had my pride. I was always hungry. I was always going to through the fields to a kitchen that was giving away some soup, and so nobody would see me. And I was trying to help the family that what I was living with. They were baking bread, and that we were distributing, selling, and that was risky, but they were nice to me. That was before I came to, and I got acquainted with, I went to employment office, I got acquainted with a girl my age, and her father worked in this place where I did later on. And I was trying to seek a job because that was the security. Otherwise, if you didn't have a job or a working card, then you were the target to be sent away. So I met her, and we tried to get in employment office, always some kind of job, cleaning offices, cleaning schools, and so on. And there, sometimes we bought a 5 decagram, which is like, I don't know, very little, maybe 2 spoons of flour, and cook it with salt and water. And that was, she had a father, an older sister, and a brother who was also working there in the employment office for the Germans. Anyway, we were at one job, and there was next to it, it was cleaning that school building, and next to it was a factory. And I went out, and I saw there was a man there, and he talked Polish, and I said, and where are you from? And he said, he's from Lodz. And I said, oh, I am from Lodz too. I said, do you hire any women? Do you have any women that are working in this factory? He says, no, but I will try to get you a job someplace. Oh, I said, this is very, very important for me because we are so hungry, I and my girlfriend. We have nothing to eat. You know, the next day he sent us a loaf of bread and some cheese and some preserves, which was something. We had a feast. And, you know, I could see that he was, I couldn't even see him close because it was over the fence. And how he sent it was a Jew who was working there in that factory. He was a foreman. He said, I have a friend, and they are going to open a house shoes factory here, that maybe you can get a job. I said, fine. That would be great. And that's how I met him. And one time he came, he said, meet me at the gate of the ghetto. I look, and he is wearing brown uniform and a red band with swastika on it. I almost fainted. He was a Polak, but he was of German descent. I said, he's going to help me? I better not talk to him anymore. And see, the job was ending, and I didn't. But through that Jew, he was sending some food, and then he wrote me a note. And he said that this boss of that factory that's supposed to open is going to come to town and meet him he will be on a bicycle, meet him. Oh, I went there, and comes a soldier, you know, I mean, he was not in uniform either. He was a German. But he saved my life, I'll tell you. He was in charge of a big outfit that was sending food for military, you know, always traveling with the military. And we had everything. So the first time when he hired me, he said, you come for interview, and we'll see. And he hired me, and he took my employment card and sent it to Gestapo, and so it would be stamped. Meanwhile, there was they were liquidating the ghetto. They were sending people on a transport. And so all the people who were working for that factory, that place, it was, in German name is Verpflegungslager, that's food for the soldiers. That's where I met my husband, because he was working there. His brother-in-law was working there. A lot of Jews was working there. And, you know, I talked with him, and he was going to take my girlfriend's card and send it to hire her. I mean, he was an older man, probably had children my age. And he hired a lot of Jewish people. Then he said, "What can you do?" I said, "Well, I can clean the offices. I can whatever." They were hiring women to sew sacks, from burlap sack. I can do a lot of things. Well, he told me to clean the floor, and standing there and watching me, and the way I was wringing out the mop. He says, "You are not a cleaning woman." I said, "Oh, no, I am, but you make me nervous." And so, well, he hired some Polak to wash, and I become his secretary. I mean, I had a roommate, like I said, he was supplying us not just food, corn to make the ovens, heat in the houses and everything. See, all the people live in one building. We were walking every morning to the place and coming back to the ghetto. After 5 o'clock, you couldn't get out. Then whenever there was a selection in the ghetto, they were trying to send people. He brought all the people who worked there and to the place of work, and said, "You spend the night here because they are going to take people from the ghetto send out, till there was no ghetto anymore." Well, one time I took he brought me, you know what? I used to take old clothes from the ghetto, from people, and bring it to him, and he used to sell it to Polacks. And I gave the for food, and I gave it to the people so it was a lot of people benefit by it. Then one time I had a pound of butter and taking it to the ghetto, and they caught me. Either somebody snitched on me or they were just looking for us. And I got 25, with a leather whip on my bare ass. And I said, "I am not going to cry. I am not going to give them satisfaction that they hurt me." And next day I said, "Well," everybody was kidding me. Can you sit? Can you sit?" I said, "Well, for $1, I'll sit down." But that was one of my worst experience to get. It was Jewish police doing it, and Germans standing there. And the less because I didn't cry, the more they were beating on me. Anyway, that was it. Everybody knew that. That was the event. Well, anyway, my boss was sent away. He said, "June, let me tell you," he called me Junia, he said, "they give me another star and send me to the Russian front to fight. But Hitler anyway lost his war." So he wrote from front to letters, till later on I didn't hear nothing. And then anyway we left. But before he left, he assured me with the guy who took his place assured me that I get a job, but it was not the same. On March 5th, 1943, they make an announcement. The German make announcement. Everybody who wants to go to Israel, and if they have to Palestine, if they have relatives, they should register, and we will see that they go. Well, my roommate said, "You know what? I have a brother there. I am going to register. So she said, you should do too. I said, I don't have nobody in Palestine. She says, well, why don't you put my brother's name, say this is your cousin, we are cousins. So I says, okay. And you know, on March 5th, we came back from work. There was my friend was not there. They all took them out, and several miles behind the city, they shoot them. I came back, my husband that time, he says, well, you're not what you going to do? You're going to live by yourself here? Come on, I am going to get somebody to see that we get married, some cantor, or because there was no rabbi, or some religious Jew, and that we get married. Pack your things. Well, I didn't know if I should pack the things or not pack the things. I didn't know if I want to or not. I hoped that he will not come back. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. But that's what he got somebody, and we had a party because he had a lot of wine and from that place where we worked and so on. And that's when we got married. 3 months later, we were sent to concentration. We came to Blizhen. We opened the gate of this camp. We were the first one to arrive. And it started as a labor camp, but wound up to being a concentration camp. SS and with big dogs, and people was shot. You know, somebody tried to escape. We were lined up, and every 10th person was taken out. And I mean, that was all in front of us. There was a young boy who was maybe 19 years old, and they took him out. I mean, he was lying on this assessment's boots and kissing those boots. He says, please let me live. I didn't have any life yet. I'll be a good boy. For nothing, just because somebody tried to escape. Now, that was in front of us. I witnessed that they brought a transport of families from Białystok, which is on the border of Russia and Poland, on the east side. And they took away their babies and taking them by arm and hitting against the wall. Till today, I can face a baby crying, because I always, when I hear it, I always see that picture. And of course, the crying of the parents and stuff like that. I went through 3 epidemics of typhus. The 3rd one, I finally got it. I worked in the kitchen, I work in hospital, I work any place they put me just to survive. My husband stayed in different barrack, and women stay in different barrack. But on Sunday we had that was in the beginning, before the SS and the Gestapo take over, the Nazis. It was just the regular soldiers, Wehrmacht. We were patrolled by them. And they were a little bit more sympathetic, so we had Sunday afternoon free, and so my husband could come to my barrack, or I never went to his barrack. And that was the life, more or less, till they liquidated that camp and took us to Auschwitz. When we came first there, they took us to a shower, took our clothes away, and just took us to a shower, and we didn't have nothing to wear. from there on, all the girls who were working, which were from mostly Czechoslovakia, and they were cutting our hair to just without any one, with such a pleasure. You know, one took off, the other started, and I had no hair left. Next day, I didn't know what happened to my husband, but I found out that he's on next camp that was separated from ours by electric wires. And I came there and I said, you know, I have no underwear, I have no bra, just this long black dress. He didn't recognize me. And many times we start writing to each other letters on a cardboard so we can tear off those pages, and this way we could have some more letters to write. And many times I was caught by the camp head, which was a woman also from Czechoslovakia. Her name was Susie. And she threatened me that she will shave off my eyebrows and my lashes, so that will be my punishment. We actually didn't have any work to do. Just sit there. This was July and the sun was beating on us, and there was no way to take a bath or wash. We traded sometimes a portion of bread for a pan of water, and 3 girls, I and 2 other girls, we had the numbers after each other. And we took that water, 3 of us, we used that water and wash ourselves. After certain time, my husband was sent away to another camp. I didn't know which camp or war or so. I said, well, I am on my own now. I have to, in order to survive, I have to be more aggressive. After a while, they were taking us to outside commando. At that point, it was fall time, and we had to. I didn't have good shoes to wear. All we beg is to have shoes with 2 holes. One, the mud would come in, and the second hole to come. With all that, there was still humor, and that was still. We made the best what we can because we were young. There were selections, and we had to parade nude with one arm up to see if the ribs are showing. If the ribs were showing, you were too skinny to work or to have any strength to do anything. We marched like every morning. We left Auschwitz camp and marched to that place where we were working. Our work was senseless. Like, let's say, the river was going, Vistula River was going straight. They wanted it to curve it, and we stood there in the mud, in the water, and dig and dig and dig. We carried with us from night before the supper, which was usually cabbage and or sauerkraut with peas, and then such a food that we were not accustomed to. And a lot of people got sick, and a lot of people couldn't tolerate it. But every morning we walk with SS men and big dogs, and it was hill down or hill up, and we had to slide, so we couldn't manage to get there. Otherwise, we were threatened with be hit with a gun or a spade, something like that. We worked there till almost winter time, November and through December, and then at that point the Russian army start shooting and so on and coming close to Auschwitz. So they wanted to send the people away, and they sent me to Bergen-Belsen. That was January 1945. And I looked over women lying on the floor on a straw that was filthy dirty. I says, well, Itka, we are going to die here. And she said, well, let's do something. Let's go. Let's clean. There was washroom full of soup bowls. Let's wash it. Maybe we can this way get a job. And we did it. And we didn't have to sleep on the floor, but we had a box bed, that we slept on, which was good. The food was horrible. We didn't eat nothing. We didn't have no changes of clothes. I mean, I wore 2 different socks, different color, a coat, and for belt I used a string, and there was a cup hanging, a tin cup hanging from the string, so we could always catch a cup of soup when somebody would be carrying to the soup, so we can catch it. We were like 5 girls together that we tried to keep with each other company all the time. In April 15, 1945, when the English army liberated our camp, I couldn't believe it. We were afraid to do anything, to get out, because we were afraid, no, this is not true. They came and they will leave us, don't leave us, they will leave us, they won't stay here. The German will still come. So we didn't believe, but it was true. And we didn't know where we're going now, where we will go. And they tried to put some kind of order, like open a canteen with food, and there were so many sick people. See, that's what happened. They gave them too much food, and people couldn't take it. And Frank died in this camp. My husband's sister died in this camp, and I didn't know where to turn or what to. Well, this few girls, they came from the canteen and said, there is a list of made by a Red Cross, and your husband survived, he's alive, and he's in Buchenwald, another camp. Well, how I go to Buchenwald, and the trains are not going. It was such a disorder all over Germany. But they came 2 men from Buchenwald looking for family in Bergen-Belsen. So they wanted to take me with them. I said, where am I going to go? 2 strange men. The trains are not going. I won't go. I wrote a letter. And I said, look up this guy and tell him I am there. I am here. So that's what happened. But the time my husband came to Bergen-Belsen, they sent us to a border of Holland and Germany. he had no transportation, so he was liberated in May 8, 1945. And he told the American soldier that he would like to have a bicycle. He was a cyclist from the before war, that he wants to seek his wife and so on. He wants to go to Bergen-Belsen. And the American soldiers stopped some German, took away his bike, and gave it to my husband. He came, we didn't know what to do either. And we came back to Bergen-Belsen, since this was at the biggest camp, DP camp in Germany. Then they wanted us to go to Israel to fight. You know, there was no Israel yet, it was Palestine, and Haganah was trying to get all the young people to come to. Well, I didn't want to go. I was tired. I wanted to have a normal life. I was married already a few years and never had a home. So it was coming to America.